From day one, the PS5 Pro has lacked the clear-cut sales pitch that its mid-gen predecessor had. It's offering 4K, ray tracing, and higher frame rates, all of which are technically available on the base model. But the Pro part of PS5 Pro wants to bring all of those features together so that you don't need to choose between them, except it only does that some of the time, resulting in an inconsistent experience that both impresses and underwhelms. But potential is the name of the game here, and the Pro's future is full of it. So what exactly is the PS5 Pro? Well, it's a mid-generation upgrade from Sony that aims to boost the performance and resolution of your favourite PS5 games. With an upgraded GPU, advanced ray tracing, and an AI upscaler it's calling PlayStation Spectral Super Resolution, or PSSR, it's hoping to eradicate the need to choose between fidelity and performance modes, and all for the cheap old price of $700. That is a joke, that's very expensive. The PS5 Pro unboxing is largely similar to the base PS5, containing the console itself, DualSense controller, HDMI 2.1 cable, USB-C to C charging cable and power cable. It does not come with the disk drive, but it does come with a 2TB internal hard drive. You can purchase a disk drive to fit the Pro from the PlayStation Direct store, if it ever comes back into stock that is. The disk drive on the PS5 Slim will also fit the Pro. The PS5 Pro's design is far more reminiscent of the Slim's design, with 4 side panels and black grills on either side, giving the console its distinction. The console is the height of the original PS5 and the width of the PS5 Slim, so sadly you cannot use the console covers from either previous model on the Pro. In addition, the Pro only comes packaged with the horizontal orientation stubs, so a vertical stand must be purchased separately. So to go into a little bit more detail, the PS5 Pro is aiming to narrow the gap between performance and fidelity modes, and it's doing so with 3 key upgrades: improved GPU, advanced ray tracing, and PSSR. On paper, that means the PS5 Pro is expected to have up to 45% faster rendering speeds, 2 to 3 times faster ray trace processing, and all with 4K visuals thanks to an AI upscaler. So basically, you can get a game like Marvel's Spider-Man 2 to run at 4K 60 frames per second with ray tracing. Very nice. However, the PS5 Pro also has extensive support for variable refresh rate, or VRR, on supporting screens, meaning performance can be boosted even further. The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered now runs with upscaled 4K and upwards of 90 frames per second, whereas titles like Resident Evil Village or Lies of P now have 120 frame per second options. Additionally, there are some games such as Gran Turismo 7, Formula 124 and No Man's Sky which now have 8K support. All of these upgrades can also apply to PSVR 2 games, however, as of launch, very few VR titles have seen enhancements. All of these upgrades require a game to be PS5 Pro enhanced. There is an extensive list of close to 100 games available during the launch period of the PS5 Pro, with support likely to arrive for most major releases moving forward. Some unsupported games like Cyberpunk 2077 and Final Fantasy 16 do seemingly receive steadier frame rates thanks to the Pro, but there's no massive change for games like them. Lastly, the PS5 Pro Game Boost has the capability to sharpen the visuals of thousands of PS4 games. Testing has, however, proved that these enhancements are rather minimal, so don't expect it to run Bloodborne at 60 frames per second. So the first thing on my mind when I heard about the PS5 Pro, and likely the first thing on your mind too, is whether there is a noticeable visual difference between games running on the PS5 and the PS5 Pro. Well, after testing about a dozen or so games, I found that most of the changes were quite welcome, although it wasn't all sunshine and ray-traced rainbows. First-party titles like God of War Ragnarok, Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, and Spider-Man 2 all received incredible PS5 Pro enhancements, with either clear visual sharpening or vastly improved frame rates. Running these games with full graphical power and high and stable frame rates is truly something special. It's outside of the first party though that things become a little muddled. A new release like Dragon Age The Veilguard has no notable improvements with its Pro enhanced version. We've even seen some games struggle with the PS5 Pro implementation even if they aren't Pro enhanced games, like Silent Hill 2 having a bunch of visual glitches, although I would probably put this down to teething issues with the new hardware. Whereas Hexworks Lords of the Fallen, a game that ran very poorly on base PS5, at least at launch, is now running upscale 4K at a rock solid 60 frames per second. Similarly, Ubisoft's The Crew Motorfest marries the two base PS5 modes for a singular Pro mode, which combines 4K and 60 FPS, a far cry from the muddy 1080p of the base version. As a quick addition, testing out the PSVR 2's Kayak VR Mirage, a graphical benchmark for Sony's headset as is, there is a substantial difference to the Pro visuals. PSVR 2 enhanced games, as I mentioned, are very limited at this time, but I would love to see how some big hitters like Horizon Call of the Mountain or Metro Awakening could benefit from that extra power. Now, the things of which you will find impressive from game to game really do differ. Sometimes it's performance and sometimes it's sharpened fidelity. Very few games have that night and day wow factor difference that a lot of you may be looking for. However, at the end of the day, I would still rather be playing the Pro than not, because while the difference can't be minimal, there is still a difference. When you talk about the differences, you have to talk about the options. Now, Cerny said this was supposed to eradicate the need to choose, and I know I'm kind of banging on about this point, but that is what they said about the PS5 Pro. But you are still choosing an awful lot with the PS5 Pro, and one of the biggest surprises that I had when testing out the different games was how inconsistent the options actually were. Now, you get games like The Crew Motorfest or Last of Us Part 2 which have singular PS5 Pro options. Others like Spider-Man 2 and Hogwarts Legacy had a choice between quality, balanced and performance Pro modes. Then you have Alan Wake 2, simply stuck with quality and performance mode options. Every game has different options and they all seem to call them something different too. What is most disappointing of all, however, is how often 30 FPS options continue to crop up. Going back to Alan Wake 2, it sees a bump in internal resolution and the introduction of ray tracing for its quality mode, but it's running at 30 FPS. For a frame rate that Cerny labelled as choppy, it's still showing up a lot on the Pro, even for some of the first party games like Horizon Forbidden West. Certainly there are some examples that take away the need to choose, but for the most part, you still need to pick between graphics and performance. The difference here is that the graphics are shinier and the performance runs faster. Now, there is a big question looming over this product thanks to its price range, and I think it's a very valid question. Should I just buy a PC instead of a PS5 Pro? The eye-watering $700 price tag does push the Pro into a new price barrier, especially when you consider that if you have a PS5 physical games collection, you'll need to shell out another $100 for an attachable disc drive. Speaking from a pure monetary standpoint, will $700 buy you a PC that plays games at the level of the PS5 Pro? No, it won't. However, unlike consoles, you will be able to take that $700 as a foundation and steadily upgrade your PC over the years. Not to mention, you'll have a functioning computer for regular life stuff to boot. So while the Pro gives you that instant bang for buck, switching to PC could be seen as a long-term investment. Eventually, it will offer higher resolutions, higher frame rates, and more bells and whistles, but it'll cost you a pretty penny in the process. The elephant in the room, however, is the life cycle of the PS5 Pro. We are more than halfway through the typical lifespan of a Sony console, with the PS6 presumably landing somewhere between 2027 and 2028. That leaves you about 4 years of prime time with the Pro before a better option is on the market. Last gen support does typically last a little longer these days, so you could easily squeak out an extra few years before you're left behind for the new generation. Ultimately though, I think it comes down to whether you're here for convenience or you want to get into the nitty gritty. If you don't mind steeping yourself into the world of drivers, graphics cards, RAM and processor chips, then maybe PC is for you. However, the PS5 Pro offers a high-level plug-and-play experience straight out of the box that PC simply cannot compete with at this price level. Saying whether the PS5 Pro is worth it is dependent on a few things. On the basis of the screen you watch on, televisions without VRR are going to miss out on a lot of that extra power, with consistently higher frame rates being one of the biggest surprises of the Pro. I've been playing on an LG C1 OLED television and an LG C2 OLED, and quite often the capabilities of the television itself amplified the PS5 Pro experience, although the same can be said for the base PS5 as well. Secondly, the upgrades for the games differ greatly. I can't say that I was too blown away by any changes in Alan Wake 2, whereas Lords of the Fallen was one of the most impressive and useful upgrades in my opinion. So with that, you should be considering the types of games that you plan to play on the Pro. Is your PS5 an EA Sports FC 25 machine, or are you someone that tries to keep up with the latest releases? Have a think about the games you'd sink the most amount of time into and how much of an upgrade they'd receive, if any at all. Lastly, something we have to consider but can't quite bet on just yet is the future. While the current enhanced games lineup is fairly extensive, all of these games have been retrofitted with PS5 Pro support. Looking to 2025 and beyond, I can imagine the possibilities of the Pro expanded upon with games developed with the unit in mind. I can think of one particular release coming next year, hopefully, fingers crossed, that could prove the Pro's worth and show the cracks of the base model's performance in the process, but I'm just speculating at this point. As for the here and now though, do your games run better on the PS5 Pro? Yes. Do they look better than ever on the PS5 Pro? In some cases, yes. But does that mean it's actually worth the upgrade? I imagine that if you've watched this far in the video, you have a pretty clear idea in your head whether this console is worth it for you or not. At the end of the day, the PS5 Pro is a niche product for enthusiasts with the best-in-class displays to play their games on. In this instance, that's me. I have been enjoying playing my favourite games on a spec'd up PS5. But if you're still happy with what your base PS5 has to offer, and maybe you don't have a 120Hz display, then you're better just holding off for the inevitable PlayStation 6. Thank you everyone for watching my review of the PS5 Pro. Let me know whether you've decided to pick this one up down in the comments below. And if you've enjoyed this video, maybe leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more PlayStation video content just like this. Anyway, thank you everyone for watching, and until next time, I've been Aidan, and this has been Push Square.